Hey guys, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Naya.
And we're here to talk about infant reflexes. And we're Wonder Woman, so we have to do 4 of these reflexes. Right? We have to do the moral reflex, the head writing reflex, the semitonic neck reflex, and the crawling reflex. Those is what our group has to do. And these are some definitions that you'll have to know.
So a reflex is an action that is performed as a response to a stimulus and without conscious thought. A primitive reflex is an infant reflex that serve predominantly for protection, nutrition, or survival. These reflexes can occur as early as 25 weeks gestation and typically disappear around 6 months of age.
And a postural reflex is more complex reflexes and developed later in the life. These are crucial and are responsible for things such as balance, coordination, and continue to mature throughout the early childhood. The moral reflex is a primitive reflex that occurs at birth and endures until approximately 4 to 6 months old. The moral reflex is a protective automatic response in newborns that can be allocated in several different ways. One is also known as the startle reflex, and also another way is to place the palm under the baby's head and suddenly but gently lower the head a few inches. This causes the baby's arms, fingers, and legs to extend and flex, often crying.
The symmetric tonic neck reflex is a primitive symmetrical reflex that is often observable during the first few months of life and is noticeable until approximately 3 months of age. This symmetrical response can be elicited by placing the baby in a supported sitting position. If the baby is tipped backwards far enough, the neck will extend, which is a stimulus for a corresponding extension of the arms and flexion of the legs. However, if the baby is tipped forward until neck flexion, the arms flex and the legs extend. This reflex is important as it helps babies develop crucial skills like crawling, posture, and hand-eye coordination by linking head movements to limb movements.
The sucking reflex is a reflex that appears very early in life, usually prenatal, and typically integrates about 4 months. The sucking reflex is elicited when the baby's lips are stimulated by the touch of the mother's breast or a finger. The baby is born without the voluntary capacity to ingest food, so sucking reflex enables the baby to ingest nutrients and it's essential for survival, involuntarily making this reflex a primitive reflex.
The palmar grasp reflex is a primitive reflex and generally appears in utero as early as the 5th month of gestation and usually integrates by 5 to 6 months and is important for developing voluntary reaching and grasping later on. The reflex happens when the palm is stimulated. All 4 fingers of the stimulated hand flex or close, this to help with baby's grasp development. So when my finger touches the baby's palm, their finger will wrap around my hand. Here, watch this.
The head writing reflex is an automatic postural reflex that allows the head to return to the upright position when the body is moved. This input from the vestibular, the inner ear, visual, and somatosensory systems. This reflex helps maintain the correct head alignment in space, stabilizes the body, aids the balance, and import into the voluntary rolling movements. Crucial for development. This reflex is allocated by turning the baby's body in either direction when the infant is in spin. The reflex can be observed as early as the first month after birth and typically is gone after the age of 6 months.
The crawling reflex is a postural reflex and can be observed from birth through the first 3 months, disappearing about 3 months before more voluntary crawling begins. To obtain this reflex, the baby is placed prone on the floor or table. The soles of the feet are stroked alternatively, causing the legs and arms to move in an action similar to crawling. This reflex is very important as it is believed to further develop sufficient muscular tone for future crawling.
The pull-up reflex, related to the upright posture, is a postural reflex that may not be observed until the 3rd month of life and typically disappears by the 1st birthday.
The stepping reflex is a postural reflex that is important for voluntary movement of walking later on in life. This reflex is present within the first few weeks following birth and generally disappears around 2 months before seeming to evolve gradually into voluntary walking.